Okay. Okay. Welcome everybody, and nice you made it. Today, myself and Milena will talk a little bit about this broad topic: how the social sciences can contribute to sustainable ocean governance, and what what the preconditions are for contributing from the social sciences. So I will elaborate in the first part a little bit more about theoretical, more abstract issues, and then we will go more concrete, turn more concrete with a project that we got some funding for from Sea and Society that we will work with next year, 2018. Did we say who we are? Okay. I'm a senior lecturer in human ecology and associate professor in environmental social science, which is a new subject at the School of Global Studies. And you can introduce yourself later, maybe?
Later, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the kind of background discussion that we want to link up to is the question how the social sciences and social aspects of sustainability can be integrated into the overall sustainability puzzle, where we often find this pillar thinking of economic, ecological and social sustainability, and where we see it merging in the figure here in the middle. We think that we can sort of integrate these aspects into a more holistic perspective on sustainability, or with the different rings where we can draw aspects of natural, social or economic sustainability also very differently depending on which perspective we look at it. We can see the natural science, the natural system as the outer ring, but we could also frame the social sustainability as a precondition for other aspects of sustainability, like ecological sustainability and economic sustainability. So this is a much debated issue. I took this from a textbook that we use in teaching in our courses. What I wanted to highlight here is the aspects of how ecological and economic sustainability have been tried to merge over the last half a century, you could say, with a lot of tensions and problems and of unsustainable development, so to speak, which also have been very basically critiqued for not going hand in hand or entailing a paradox that sustainable development does not work as a concept where development is framed in a dominant economic growth perspective. And more recently, we try to include social aspects of sustainability, but that has been more raised during the last 10-20 years with a lot of question marks how social sustainability could be sort of integrated into existing frameworks, or what different preconditions may have to be considered in order to make this a more holistic approach, where we go beyond this three-pillar thinking. And when we look at the Agenda 2030 and the UN sustainability goals that are part of this seminar here, we can see this dominance of the natural science, I think, very clearly in many of the goals, particularly in the goal 14 that is addressed here, life below the water. It's already in the wordings. There's no social activities under the water, at least no human activities. We're not focusing on social activities, but human activities that are not captured in the name of this goal, although they are addressed in the sub-goals and the indicators to some extent. But social activities that that we are focusing on are happening above the water, or mainly on land. Fisheries management happens not on the water or under the water, but on land. In communities, how communities try to make use of issues like fisheries management, maybe in different contexts. We will elaborate later a little bit on that. For example, with sustainable consumption, creating jobs and economic growth, which is very context sensitive, as we will try to highlight here as well. Looking at what are the social, what can we understand as social concepts of sustainability? I just want to briefly, in 2 slides, present some of the very recent, some recent articles which I think develop this discussion very nicely on how to engage social concepts and social aspects into ongoing work on sustainability and sustainable development. This is an article that has been published in Science from Christine Hicks and others. There are further articles presented by the same author consortium on the same topic. Here they look into how social indicators cannot need to be developed for sustainability in general, but there's also one author, Kevin St. Martin from Rutgers University, who works on fisheries, who also discusses fisheries management in the US mainly in these articles. And these social indicators can be grouped broadly into these 4 categories: well-being, relating to life quality, both material but also relational well-being of humans, people, values, cultural values are very important to consider. What people value in coastal communities, for example, fish from the Baltic Sea or Norwegian aquaculture, salmon, that's very different. And these values also impact, of course, on aspects of life quality and well-being. Agency is a very important indicator also, how people feel to have a chance to contribute to policy developments, decision-making, or changing governance or management structures. So power is an important social concept that needs to be highlighted here. But also inequality, how resources are distributed, etc. In summary, one can say that there is a lot of progress on how these social indicators can be developed and made fit for integration into ongoing sustainable development agendas. But there is still a big task in how to combine quantitative and qualitative measures on social aspects here. And this is addressed in another article, actually by the same, more or less the same author group. Susan Charnley is one of the main author of this article that looks at how to integrate what they call best available social science into existing science policy agendas and frameworks on natural resource management practices. And as these also highlight, we often talk about the human dimensions today, about natural resource management or the EAM, the ecosystem approach. But we can emphasize that social and ecological sustainability are not only need to be integrated or made coexistent, but they are in fact interrelated. We can see social sustainability also as a precondition for establishing ecological sustainability, for example in fisheries management. And this is something that is also to some extent tried to address by the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs, particularly SDG 17, to link these different goals. So there's a strong requirement for applying social science research into decision making here, working from an interdisciplinary perspective, but there's often a big question, how should we do that? What we find is that a lot of laws and regulations emphasize the need for best available science usually, but it's very vaguely or not at all spelled out who defines what is best available science in these laws and regulations like the CFP, the Common Fisheries Policy of the EU, for example. That's usually left to a scientific community that is dominated by natural scientists like the International Council for the Exploration of the Seas, ICES, for example. And there's an important need to develop also in ICES and other organizations to develop standards to find criteria for best available social science, which these authors call call the BASS framework. Because, and particularly important here, there might be some of the criteria very similar to natural science, like quantitative social science criteria, things that we can measure. But there are also a lot of aspects from the qualitative social sciences that need to be included for social sustainability. Things that go beyond it. We often have this traditional notion of we can only manage what we can measure, but social sustainability with all these different aspects that I mentioned require us to go beyond this and also include what we can't measure in sustainability. Because the risk of reducing all the scientific information that is available with the indicators that I just mentioned, risk an unsustainable agenda by reducing all information to measurable aspects of best available social science criteria. Okay, I just wanted to mention this kind of theoretical perspective from the literature about sort of state of the art, what we can find, how social science can be integrated and what this state of the research agenda is here. Moving a little bit further to our own questions about how marine social science at Gothenburg University can be developed in Europe and beyond, we can ask the first question: where do we usually contribute in the academic literature, for example? We have the fisheries journals that we are always inclined to publish in, like Marine Policy, or we have another less well-known journal of maritime studies that is under Springer, or a very more successful recently book series that is under Springer, the Arias series. But I think it's also important to see how we can contribute to the sustainable development literature more broadly and link up with the Agenda 2030 on the UN SDGs. But also we can gain a lot from having a broader view on the environmental social sciences and look into how critical perspectives can be made use of for existing frameworks on natural resource management practices, how actors in environmental governance can work together, including the social aspects, etc., etc. Second question, why? What are the purposes and aims when we want to engage beyond academia? I think one important domain is the development about ecosystem-based approaches and ecosystem-based fisheries management in particular, for example, in ISIS, but also in other areas where there's an ongoing discussion about how social science indicators can be developed and made use of for the requirement to include that in the ecosystem approach. But also we have been working with Ulrika and Morten, for example, here in Sweden about social aspects where I think our mandate or role can be nicely framed with this. How can we find these BASS criteria, as mentioned here in the next to last row, for contributing to strategies, for example, to implement the ecosystem-based fisheries management approach in Sweden. But also we always look at what's going on in Europe and our partner institutes in other countries. We were mentioned this in the end. There's a big network of social sciences in different countries in Europe that have strong collaborations on research. But that is always, I think, an important issue to look at what's ongoing in European research policy in this area. So a brief last slide from me, leaving over to the project that we will work on now in the next year. The starting point for us is that we find a very weak position of the marine social sciences at Gothenburg University. There have been recent initiatives, for example, that started with the Havsford, the Marine Graduate School under the Center for Marine Environmental Research, where I and Milena have been working in, and now with the Sea and Society Center. We find a lot of motivations and possibilities for new interdisciplinary attempts what we know all, that takes a lot of time, resources, and also engagement. Therefore, we are very happy about funding that we have received to work with this next year. We see a need for strengthening the efforts of the social sciences in order to bring the social scientists, so to say, back to the research front and to the overall research agenda on these aspects that I have mentioned now. And there are two more concrete strategies or parts of this work. We want to make start with an inventory, have a look at what is needed, can we synthesize on existing research, and how can we develop new ideas for research programs. That's the second part. That's where we want to establish an overarching research platform for the social sciences. But that does not need to be only for social sciences. There are also natural scientists working with us, like Andrea Belgrano is in this project. But we want to not close it to social science. So natural scientists are also welcomed, of course. Yes, I think that's all what I...
Okay, my name is Milena Schreiber, and I was a postdoc here at the University of Gothenburg, and I've been working with fisheries, and I am a social scientist working with fisheries since the last at least 10 years, I think. And I'm going to talk about this grant that we had. So in April this year, we applied for this call from Science Society, the special call for support research within human social sciences. And we were very happy that we got this application succeed. And so how are we in practice applying what Sebastian just talked in the previous slide? And the aim of our research, this is a very small project, it's just 6 months, I think, the whole thing. It's we want to ask which research exists and which research is needed for two questions or two targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. The first one is to overcome overfishing in aquatic resources in Sweden and to provide access for Swedish small-scale fishers to marine resources and markets. And we want to do it transdisciplinary. So, working with fishermen, there's no, with, in the middle are the scientists, but also with the managers. That's our idea, to do it transdisciplinary. So how are we going to do this? We want to propose together a social science research agenda, working with a group of scientists. In this case, we have until the moment social scientists included, political scientists, economists, educational people from the educational research, and from the biological sciences. But if someone seems to be interested, is welcome to join us. So the idea is to do it interdisciplinary and get as many ideas and broad spectrums as possible. And we will have 2 workshops, and we want to write a scientific paper on what are our challenges to work interdisciplinary, what are our views, or if there are synergies between ecologists and economists working, or how there is a view of integrated research. Then we have planned one workshop with the managers. In this case, we will bring our results of this research agenda to the managers and ask them what they think about it. This is not the ideal objective of a transdisciplinary work, because you should really create together. But at least in this case, we want to discuss with the managers and to fill this gap between this science policy interface. And then, of course, we want to ask the fishermen what they think about our research agenda. And in this case, we have 2 communities, yes, in Simrishamn, and Sebastian will explain why are we going in Simrishamn, and in the coastal area as well. And we are very ambitious with our little project, so we want to an overview of the existing research, and define this research agenda for human social sciences, but doing together with other disciplines and with the managers and with the users. We want to establish and develop this interdisciplinary marine network with researchers that previously have joined in other projects, but at the moment are not working together. And also to include some new joint scholars, because we think that's also a problem, that when you finish your studies, there's no way to be included in such projects. Create new momentum opportunities for larger research projects. This is our dream. And we want to work with the involvement of, as I said, stakeholders and create a new platform for transdisciplinary research. Okay? Yeah. Thank you.
This was just one example that I thought was worthwhile to mention here in the end. I've been to a conference recently in Simrishamn, which is called Baltic Fisheries 2020, Östersjöfiske 2020, which I think is a nice exemplification of how to attempt to include the social aspects of sustainability or start the work from this end. And one example that has been put forward, not this conference, but the last conference, they have an annual conference there in Simrishamn on these aspects. How their aim is to increase the value of the natural resource, in this case here with an exemplification of cod, which has been addressed a lot as a case of overfishing. But here this example from Sebastian that has been put forward there is just, if we manage to increase the price of the landed cod by a little bit more than twofold, it is, right? From 11 crowns to 26 crowns, we could decrease the landings by 58%, so roughly 60% almost, earning where the fishermen would earn the same amount of money from landing only 40% of the catch. And this is, I think, a nice exemplification how, from a different societal perspective, can establish a value creation of a natural resource, where we not start from the ecological sustainability perspective, but from a social, or in this case more, community, societal sustainability perspective. And this, I think, can be, exploring these ideas and developments, I think, can be fruitfully engaged with ongoing literature on, for example, that's been framed as diverse economies, where different kinds of economic market chains need to be established and can be valued from a community perspective, for example. Kevin St. Martin, who I already mentioned, has, for example, contributed to this literature significantly, working in the US. I just received one article this morning that I think would be interesting and worthwhile to mention here about socio-cultural values, discussing Baltic salmon fisheries from two Finnish colleagues, framing the Baltic salmon management from all these different perspectives, not only seeing it as part of the ecosystem or a market commodity, but different kinds of social, cultural values. Of course, that opens up a lot. Yes, I just want to finish by mentioning some what we think very important international collaborations and networks that we're working closely together with, partly with the IFM, the Institute for Fisheries Management at Aalborg, Innovative Fisheries Management in Aalborg University. I'm affiliated also at the University in Tromsø, the Fisheries College there. Then we work together also with colleagues at Wageningen University. There's an EU cost network in Bremen that has been established where we are part of. We also work with a project called TBTI, Too Big to Ignore, that has a focus on small-scale fisheries, and the Mara network that publishes the Mara series and organizes the most important conference for social science and marine issues in Amsterdam every other year, the Mara conference. Okay, this was all we wanted to say. It's a kind of a broad outline of nothing that we want to achieve overnight or not even next year. I think that's some ideas that we see as important to engage with from our perspective here at the university in collaboration with many of you.